It's precisely 1:15. This is the news on Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. News is edited by Romesh Piris and read by Sabrina Zawahir. The headlines. Over 300 vaccination centres open as Sri Lanka ramps up COVID-19 national inoculation drive. The Chinese ambassador assures the Chinese government is giving priority to provide all assistance to control the COVID-19 pandemic in Sri Lanka. Increasing new daily COVID cases push the overall case tally to rise. The cabinet approval to import organic fertilizer for Maha season. The program on decentralization of consular services within the purview of the Foreign Ministry is underway. The pensioners are requested not to visit the Pensions Department to resolve issues due to the prevailing COVID-19 situation in the country. Sri Lanka to recognize divorce in foreign countries. And in world news, the US envoy heads to Qatar to press Taliban to end their military offence. And in sports, it's cricket. The former Sri Lanka batsman Thilan Samarawira joins the New Zealand coaching setup. Now the local news in detail. Sri Lankan authorities said 45 vaccination centres will be open today to administer the second dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine and another 293 vaccination centres to administer the other vaccines. The State Minister for Supply, Production and Regulation of Pharmaceuticals says in Sri Lanka has further ramped up the COVID-19 national inoculation drive by rolling out a total of 490,805 vaccinations yesterday. Professor Channa Jayasumana added that 311,102 of these individuals have received the second dose of the vaccine. This is reportedly the highest number of second doses rolled out within a day. According to Epidemiology Unit's data, 15% of the population, or 3,249,670 people in Sri Lanka, have now been fully vaccinated against COVID-19. The Chinese ambassador to Sri Lanka, Chi Jehong, says that the Chinese government is giving priority to provide all assistance to control the COVID-19 pandemic in Sri Lanka. The Chinese ambassador said steps will be taken to provide grants and necessary assistance to Sri Lanka in the future. He was speaking at a special discussion with Minister of Health Pavitra Waniarachi at the Chinese embassy. Minister Waniarachi said that the government is very grateful to the Chinese government for providing 80% of the vaccines to Sri Lanka to make the country's vaccination program a great success. The Epidemiology Unit of the Ministry of Health reports that another 1,010 persons have tested positive for COVID-19 today, pushing the daily count of new cases to 2,938. This brings the tally of confirmed cases of coronavirus identified in the country to 332,947. Sri Lanka's total recoveries stand at 295,518, while over 32,318 COVID-19 positive patients are currently being treated at hospitals. The death toll in Sri Lanka due to the virus is 5,222. The government has decided to import milk powder to resolve a shortage in the market. The attention of the cabinet was drawn to a shortage of milk powder in the market. As a result, the cabinet decided to vest the powers to the Minister of Finance, Basil Rajapaksa, to study the matter and take necessary action. The minister has been advised to ensure that sufficient stocks of milk powder are supplied to the local market by revising the existing tax rates or taking other appropriate measures to import milk powder. Meanwhile, the cabinet approval has been granted to import organic fertilizer required for the Maha season 2020-2021 as the local fertilizer producers were unable to supply the required volume. Accordingly, international bidders have been invited by the Ceylon Fertilizer Company Limited and Colombo Commercial Fertilizers Limited to acquire the required fertilizer supply. The Cabinet of Ministers have approved the proposal made by the Agricultural Minister to award the tenders based on the recommendations of the Special Tender Board appointed by the Cabinet. This news is brought to you by Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.
Get a personal loan for your marriage, education or housing within 24 hours with People's Bank Digital Banking.
Continuing local news, the Department of Pensions requested pensioners not to visit the Department of Pensions to resolve any related issues. Instead of visiting the department, pensioners are able to forward their issues, inquiries to the hotline 1970. The Director General of the department said the decision has been taken considering the prevailing COVID-19 situation in the country. Sri Lanka has decided to recognize divorce proceedings and judicial separations in foreign countries. The court decisions obtained by Sri Lankans who have married in Sri Lanka and subsequently moved overseas and filed a divorce case is not accepted in Sri Lanka. The government noted that this has resulted in couples having to face various difficulties. Therefore, a couple needs to file a divorce case in Sri Lanka as well for it to be recognized. A 4-member ministerial committee has been appointed to look into the teachers' and principals' salary issues. Minister Keheli Rambukwalla stated that the committee has been appointed by the Cabinet of Ministers. The newly appointed committee consists of Ministers Wimal Weerawansa, Prasanna Ranatunga, Mahinda Amaraweera and Dallas Alheperuma. The committee is to study and submit proposals to resolve the salary anomalies of teachers and principals. The Department of Posts has decided to restrict the services of post and sub-post offices to 4 days per week. Accordingly, post offices and sub-post offices will be open only on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays. However, the EMS International Courier Service, the Speed Post Service, the Overseas Parcel Service and the Stamp Sealing Division will continue operations as per usual at the Central Mail Exchange. Acting Postmaster General H. Hebage said the decision was taken due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. That ends local news. Next up is the main news story.
Get a personal loan for your marriage, education or housing within 24 hours with People's Bank Digital Banking. People's Bank Digital Banking, your ultimate convenience.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
The program on decentralization of consular services within the purview of Foreign Ministry is underway. Foreign Secretary Admiral Professor Jayanath Columbage points out that this program is being conducted in accordance with the scheme by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to bring public service to the village. Secretary Columbage also points out that the 3 regional consular offices in Kandy, Trincomalee and Kurunegala districts have been dedicated to public service in the previous 10 months under the present government, and that preliminary action has been taken to establish 2 other regional offices in Badulla and Ampara districts before the end of this year. That was our main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
In Watchlight, the National Water Supply and Drainage Board announced that the water supply to several areas in the Mathale district will be interrupted for 24 hours from today owing to the construction of pipelines in the Visal Mathale water project. Accordingly, the water cut will be effective from 8 a.m. today until 8 a.m. tomorrow, August the 11th. Udugama, Palapatwela, Dostarawatta, Dunankolavatta and Samandava Nikawala B areas will be affected by the interruption. That came to you in Watch Light. Next up, it's a bulletin of world news. Taking a look at the headlines of the world news. The US envoy heads to Qatar to press Taliban to end their military offensive. The Belarusian President Lukashenko reaffirms grip on power. Jeffrey Epstein abuse survivors awarded $125 million as claims end. Now the world news in detail. The U.S. State Department announced that the United States envoy on Afghanistan Zalmay Khalilzad will press the Taliban to stop their military offensive at talks in Qatar's capital this week after the armed group seized a string of provincial capitals. The department added in a statement on Monday, Ambassador Khalilzad will be in Doha to help formulate a joint international response to the rapidly deteriorating situation in Afghanistan. The State Department said that several planned rounds of meetings were scheduled over 3 days to discuss the situation in Afghanistan. The Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has marked the first anniversary of his re-election by insisting the vote was democratic and fair. However, thousands of people who protested the result have suffered beatings and arrested by security forces. Lukashenko has been president for 27 years. In a news conference in Minsk yesterday, he said his opponents were preparing for a coup. He added that the only resource he can provide is for the security and safety of the sovereign, independent Belarusian state for the first time in all these centuries. The program, designed to compensate the survivors of convicted sex offender and financier Jeffrey Epstein, has concluded its claims process after deciding to award $125 million to about 150 eligible people, its administrator announced in a statement on Monday. Approximately 225 claims were submitted to the Epstein's Victims Compensation Program between its launch on June 25, 2020 and its filing deadline on March 25, 2021. The conclusion of the claims process comes 1 day before the second anniversary of Epstein's death at the age of 66. That ends World News. Prior to concluding the headlines of the World News once again, the U.S. envoy heads to Qatar to press Taliban to end their military offensive. The Belarusian President Lukashenko reaffirms grip on power. Jeffrey Epstein abuse survivors awarded $125 million as claims end. With that, we conclude the world news. Next up is the development news.
Development News is brought to you by
Quality matters than price. So as an engineer, I recommend Melba RB500. It's made with virgin billets using the latest technology. Melba RB500, #1 in Sri Lanka. Truly Sri Lankan.
Win lakhs and lakhs with CIB Janajaya. 40% discount for your bills till 15th of August. 6 hand tractors at the Grand Row. CIB Janajaya.
The Ministry of Urban Development and Housing states that the process of preparing the sea sand from the Muthurajawala sand yard for the use in the construction industry has been expedited. This project is being implemented on the instructions of the Minister of Urban Development and Housing, the Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. The cabinet approval was obtained for the sea sand project, which was to pump sea sand to land by pipeline at a distance of 16 kilometers from the sea. In addition to the main yard at Muthurajawala, the sand is also available to consumers at Kalaniya, Navala, Kirimandala Mawatha and Attiliya. That was the development news. Next up is the sports news.
Development News was brought to you by
Quality matters than price. So as an engineer, I recommend Melba RB500. It's made with virgin billets using the latest technology. Melba RB500, #1 in Sri Lanka. Truly Sri Lankan.
Win lakhs and lakhs with CIB Janajaya. 40% discount for your bills till 15th of August. 6 hand tractors at the Grand Row. CIB Janajaya.
In sports news, the The former Sri Lanka batsman Thilan Samaravira has been named in the New Zealand coaching setup. New Zealand is slated to tour Bangladesh and Pakistan ahead of the forthcoming T20 World Cup. Tom Latham will lead New Zealand in T20 series against Bangladesh and ODIs against Pakistan. The squad leaves for Bangladesh on August 23rd for the T21 series, while Pakistan ODIs will begin on the 17th of September. Meanwhile, Australia were bowled out for 62, their lowest 2020 score, as they slipped to a 60-run and 4-1 series loss against Bangladesh in Mirpur. The tourists were all out in 13.4 overs, their shortest innings in 104 years. Bangladesh made 102 runs for 8 wickets from 20 overs. The Tigers had never beaten Australia in a T20 before this 5-game series. That was Sports News.
Contributory deposit of 1,000 rupees from NSB when your child enters grade 1. Open a Hapan Children's Service account for your kid today. Higher interest. Conditions apply.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Union Pay International is the first international card scheme to partner with BOC Smart Pay to enable QR code payments in Sri Lanka. Tourists who have Union Pay enabled QR apps can scan the Bank of Ceylon QR code at merchant outlets and pay for goods and services. The first transaction of this partnership took place at Ministry of Crab, which was the first Sri Lankan merchant to obtain an Union Pay-enabled EDC terminal provided by BOC. That ends Business News.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Contributory deposit of 1,000 rupees from NSB when your child enters grade 1. Open a Hapan Children's Service account for your kid today. Higher interest. Conditions apply.
Economic news, courtesy of...
I bought my daughter a laptop for her work by managing my finances. Whatever the expenses may be, I can't afford to miss out on life's special moments like her birthday or our anniversary. So you need to invest to make your family's future flourish.
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibilities. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act No. 42 of 2011.
Sri Lanka is getting proposals to invest in tourism despite a coronavirus pandemic, with 64 projects now being evaluated and 38 projects valued at $102.3 million being approved, the Tourism Office said. Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority said from March 2020 to June 2021, $950 million of investments have come to the country. SLTDA has also established an investment relations unit to expedite the approval of all tourism investments. That ends Economic News.
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibility. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act No. 42 of 2011.
Weather report was sponsored by
Dialogue, in partnership with the Ministry of Education, introduces Nanasa, a trilingual educational mobile app with video-based lessons for grade 1 to A-levels. Now your child can study with ease on your mobile with no subscription fee.
Finally, it's a look at the weather report. The Met Department forecasts showers to occur at several places in the western, Sabragamua and central provinces and in the Gaul and Mathura districts. Showers or thundershowers may occur at a few places in the Uva province and in the Ampara and Batticaloa districts during the evening or night. The Met Department cautions fairly strong winds up to 40 to 50 kilometers per hour in the Hambantota district. That was the weather report.
Weather report was sponsored by
Dialogue, in partnership with the Ministry of Education, introduces Nanasir, a trilingual educational mobile app with video-based lessons for grade 1 to A-levels. Now your child can study with ease on your mobile with no subscription fee.
Prior to concluding this bulletin of news, the headlines once again. Over 300 vaccination centres open as Sri Lanka ramps up COVID-19 national inoculation drive. The Chinese ambassador assures the Chinese government is giving priority to provide all assistance to control the COVID-19 pandemic in Sri Lanka. Increasing new daily COVID cases push the overall case tally to rise. The cabinet approval to import organic fertilizer for Maha season. The program on decentralization for consular services within the purview of the Foreign Ministry is underway. The pensioners are requested not to visit the Pensions Department to resolve issues due to the prevailing COVID-19 situation in the country. Sri Lanka to recognize divorce in foreign countries. With that, we conclude the news.